Hey folks, it's Tommy Z. In this video, I want to share with you a quick recap of the world that I presented to you in my Art of Aliveliness presentation. This diagram, though it looks complicated, I will take you through it in a sec, but it's really the map of the territory on your way to a life fully lived, the Art of Aliveliness. You cannot live your life fully unless you're living your life. That's the first thing, okay? So this map, which I'm going to take you through very quickly, and I know it looks like chicken scratch, and my wife warned me. She's like, don't show this picture to anyone. But here I am showing it to you. And the best way to follow me through this is just to redraw it on your own. So maybe grab a pen right now, grab a pencil, grab your journal, and let's take this step by step. And I'll make this quick, and I promise it will open your eyes to new ways of seeing the pains and the possibilities in your life. All right? So let me get on this side now. Turn this gimbal around so we can actually go through the diagram. The first thing you're going to see here is the Metropolis. Okay, that's the first thing I want you to draw in the center of your page. Draw it like an M, so you remember it stands for the Metropolis, or the machine if you like. The M kind of looks like your Gmail symbol, right? And somebody once said that email, your inbox, is just other people's to-do lists. And it's absolutely true. Many of us spend most of our life in our inbox, and that's a pretty sad life. I don't want that for you, okay? So the Metropolis is essentially the place where we spend all of our life and we feel stuck. You can see the little H's here, humans running around, but the H's stand for heads, hearts, and hands. And in the Metropolis, they're lowercase, meaning we're often scattered, we're living small lives, we're basically playing games and chasing all kinds of success with a small s that doesn't bring us fulfillment in the end. And the Metropolis doesn't actually care about your life. It makes a lot of promises to you through the billboards, through advertisements. It is trying to rouse up your desire, and through the feeds, through the screens, essentially it's not nourishing you whatsoever. The feeds are not there to feed you or nourish you. They're really there to feed on your attention in their best interest. It's not in the interests of the Metropolis to make sure that you are fulfilled, only to give you the promise of being fulfilled, only to give you the illusion of being fulfilled, so that somehow you keep returning to the screens, returning to the feeds, and every once in a while, you might feel like your life is actually running out of steam. We're facing a big problem with burnout now. Well, do you know why that is? There is no way that you can have steam in your life if you keep running on a treadmill and you're not getting anywhere. In other words, there's no real bigger story in your life. There is no sense. And the Metropolis tries to hide the fact that there is no sense to most of the games that it's playing, to most of the streams, to most of the feeds, to most of the screens that it's presenting you with. There's really no sense other than for the feed to harness your attention, to have you as the product, to have you as the consumer, okay, so that it can serve its own interests, all right? So we live now in an age where in the Metropolis, we are surrounded by all kinds of stimuli. Our senses are stuffed. There's really no problem like with stuff to see or stuff to hear through our screens and through the feeds. But I don't know how many of you have ever gotten up off the couch or put your phone down after scrolling through your feeds and you felt like your soul was nourished, your soul was filled, like you felt alive and filled with good energy, right? Our senses are stuffed, but our souls are starving. And the biggest problem with staying in the metropolis, and some of the people that might be watching this, I mean, I hope for all of you that you can get out of here and I'll show you a way out. But some people will always be stuck in the metropolis through this very destructive pattern, perpetuating pattern of stimuli grabbing your attention, but because you're like half sleeping and half hypnotized by the feeds and the empty promises, essentially you automatically react. And you're stuck in this basic pattern of stimuli and reaction. And as soon as you get tired because there is no sense and you run out of steam and you start burning out, the metropolis offers you a billboard saying, hey, grab an energy drink, or hey, buy yourself a Volvo. That'll distract you for a while, right? But the thing is, eventually you run out of steam again, and so another billboard in your feed has to show up to get you locked into this pattern of stimuli reaction. Because as long as you're doing this, the metropolis can feed off of your time, attention, and energy. So now, what do we want to do if we want to live a life full of aliveliness? Well, the first thing to do is to extract yourself from the machine, from the metropolis, okay? And the way to do this is to basically cut yourself off from the stimuli of the metropolis. So this means cut yourself off from your screens, from your feeds, maybe from a job or circumstances that you feel stuck in, and I want you to go and journey outside of the metropolis here into the desert of silence. A lot of ancient traditions see the desert as a symbol of purification, of cleansing, and that's exactly what we need now more than ever. We need to be cleansed, we need to be purified. I believe that life in the age of files, in the age of music and film and photography being commoditized, essentially turning into files, I believe that a life authentically lived, fully lived, will be the next and the highest art form. In other words, those of us who remain alive as human beings and we remain awake and aware will once in a while run across a real human being, and we will be shocked and we will be delighted and we will be acting as if we found a rare treasure. Those are the times that I believe are coming, because most people in the metropolis will essentially keep repeating this stimuli and reaction pattern until they essentially turn into zombies. Because what is a zombie? It is a human being that has not used their soul in a long while. So they become like robots, okay? And they buy into the promises of the metropolis every single time, and so they never feed their soul, and so they're not really acting, they're not really using the entire capacity, all the parts that a human being has available to them, like mind, body, and soul. But back to escaping from the metropolis. I'm not saying that this is a permanent escape. You will have to return to the metropolis. We all have obligations. We all have things to do within the metropolis. But the whole key to a life fully lived is to actually extract yourself from circumstances that make you feel stuck, that make you feel like a robot, and to go into the desert and to spend some time every day in silence. And you see that the desert kind of looks like a D. And I did this on purpose so that it's easy to remember. Now, the point is not to just stay in the desert. The point of the desert is to go through the silence so that you can clear your antenna. Now, why do you want to clear your antenna? And what am I even talking about? Well, I believe that every human being is made up of three parts: head, heart, and hands, okay? So within your heart is actually an antenna, something that communicates with the source. And the source is really the thing that is responsible for all of existence, okay? This is the higher intelligence that you might want to tap into if you want to figure out what your calling is, what your unique purpose is. Because I believe that every one of us is made not to exist as a robot in the metropolis, feeding on the feeds that never actually feed you, but it is to discover your true calling, your true purpose, and that's what's going to make you feel alive. And I'm not speaking here from theory or abstract experience. I am speaking as someone who used to be, in my case, in a corporate career that was sucking the life out of me. I was a banker on Bay Street. And eventually, because I was going through these patterns of stimuli reaction, I was continuing to distract myself with fancy cars, for instance, to compensate for the fact that I was deeply unhappy deep down with my job. I didn't really feel like there was a sense to my life. I was not really feeling as if I'm responding to my unique calling as a creative person. I'm stuck in a cubicle in the Metropolis doing things that I don't even believe in. And so I actually did this. I stepped out into the desert. I would take a lunch break alone, okay, for an hour, and get outside of the skyscrapers of the Metropolis, go into the desert, eat lunch alone without the coworkers. And the reason for this is when you stay in the Metropolis all the time, there are people in the Metropolis, for instance, your coworkers, who will try to reinforce your identity of staying in this skyscraper because they don't see a way out. They don't want to be bothered. They're just comfortable doing this pattern right here. Stimuli, reaction. Stuffing our senses so we don't notice that our soul is starving, okay? And ignoring the fact that there's really no sense or purposeful story in their life. So let's distract ourselves with, a Chinese lunch, a tasty lunch in the food court of the corporate head office. But the problem with this is, you all sit there and commiserate, and it further reinforces your identity here. And it actually takes away your perspective of freedom. It's like having your windows and your doors closed. You don't even realize that there's a world outside the Metropolis. But I had a sense that there is a world outside of the Metropolis, and I started eating lunch alone and spending time, my lunch hour, in the desert of silence, okay? And like I said, the point is not to stay here. The point was actually to move on to the next stage. And this next stage, you might be wondering what that is. Everyone who sees this picture wonders what it is. Well, let me tell you what it is. This is a well. This is where you get your life-giving water. And you can remember this well with this W. Now, this W actually looks like something else, right? What does it look like? Two other letters, V and V. Well, let me explain to you what happens when you manage to get outside of the Metropolis, even if it's only for 15 minutes a day, and you go into the desert and you spend some time in silence, cut off from all the stimuli, from all the noise, okay? Finally, you start feeling like there may be a sense of freedom in a way because you're lacking any kind of stimuli to react to. Some people might feel very uncomfortable with this newfound freedom. Some people don't know how to be alone in the silence. But going through this desert and learning how to be comfortable in the silence is an absolutely necessary step in order to gain benefit from this next stage, which is tapping the well for life-giving water, okay? So you can remember this W stands for well, or it stands for water, okay? Now, the beautiful thing about this life-giving water that you're going to find in the well is that this water contains two life-giving ingredients, and these are values and vision, okay? Now, most people basically live a life of borrowed dreams. They think they desire something because they desire it. But the truth is, they don't even realize that they've been staring at a feed or a billboard or your favorite YouTuber, and somehow this desire that is not really theirs is programmed into them. So you start chasing, these desires that aren't even yours in the first place, and you start working really hard, and you start spending all your time chasing after these desires, only to realize that you're running out of steam. And why are you running out of steam? It's because this desire wasn't yours in the first place. Do you understand? This desire was borrowed from somebody else. Because you've never had time with yourself in the desert of silence, you cannot possibly hear the voice within you, okay, that's coming from the well in the form of your vision and your values, trying to tell you why you were born, what unique attributes and superpowers that you have that the world wants you to realize in order to make the world a better place. Because you've never done this, you're chasing after the dreams of YouTubers, after someone else's vision board, and this is why your body, essentially, because it is made of heart, head, and hands, your heart has a life detector deep inside that says, hey, I'm feeling tired and uninspired. And you don't take the time to figure out, why is that? Why am I feeling tired and uninspired? No, you just keep buying into the feeds, into the screens, you keep stuffing your senses. And this is why you keep going through this cycle of burning out, of running out of steam, and then believing the world when it tells you it's going to be cured with an energy drink or a fancy car. And so we must go every day into the desert, 15 minutes of silence every single day. Now, the fruits of this is going to be a clearer vision of what our conscience is trying to tell us. And this is the well, okay? If you spend enough time alone in the silence, what's going to start happening is you're going to start hearing certain words arising within your consciousness. These might be questions, these might be statements, these might be problems. All of this needs to be spilled onto a piece of paper, okay? So we have the first S, which is silence in the desert. The next part is spilling. I want you to spill all these words onto a piece of paper. Why? Because you want to sort them. You cannot sort what you cannot see. There are all kinds of things happening in your heart and behind your eyes, in your head, that you cannot really see, okay? And it's hard to make sense out of things that you cannot see. And so I want you to spill all the things that are happening behind your eyes and within your heart onto a piece of paper, okay? And that's the only way you're going to be able to sort them. You cannot sort what you cannot see. And eventually, when you spend long enough, every single day, sitting through 7 minutes to 15 minutes of silence and then spilling your thoughts out onto paper, you're going to realize that eventually you're able to make sense of certain words, of certain sentences, of certain questions. In other words, some words will become more important than others. And maybe some of these words might become your values. I believe that it is values that actually create a liveliness, that actually create an ever renewable source of energy within you. When you live according to the promises of the Metropolis, you're going to run out of steam every single time because most of those things don't make sense. They're just there to feed off of you. But if you can connect deep within yourself and to recognize what values, what words you are willing to live or to die for, that's when we begin to have hope that our life will begin to have its own unique sense. And then what happens is you can actually return to the Metropolis and even beyond, but we'll get to that in a sec. And now you're no longer living according to stimuli and mindless reaction, but you're looking within reality for signs that confirm the sense of your story. I hope that this is making sense to you, okay? And anyone who's gone through this exercise will actually realize that if you take the time to develop your own values, these are words that you're willing to live or die by. Let me give you an example. It could be faith. It could be creativity. It could be family. It could be justice. It could be any of those words that strongly resonate with you. And then you take these words back into the Metropolis and even beyond to these mountains, which I will explain in a second. You will notice that suddenly you're filled with a different kind of energy. Why? Because now your story is making sense. Now you're seeing signs in reality that indeed the path is opening up. Life is showing you that your life is actually a story, okay? A story that is unfolding, and this story has a deep sense because you're now living according to your values and your vision. You're living according to the blueprint that was designed by the source when it created you. Okay, now I know some people might not agree with this, and this is absolutely fine. You might not believe there's a source that created you. You might believe that life is random. But I believe that life is not random and that we are all innately built to seek sense in our life. And we actually enjoy a story that makes sense. We enjoy when we see signs and things that seem like coincidence, but actually turn out to be game changers in our life. And I believe that human beings enjoy a good story. And a good story always makes sense, right? It has a beginning, it has a middle, it has an ending, it has some drama, it has some resolution, and we all like a story that ends well. The other thing that might help you when you're spending 15 minutes or so alone in silence of the desert and then spilling out whatever's happening in your mind and heart onto paper so that you can make sense of it, so that you can sort it, is to picture a tree beside this well. And I wrote a T here because T might stand for a tree. But the entire key to this exercise here, where you're spilling out words on paper and then trying to identify what words might serve as your vision or your values, is to seek beyond yourself. And this T stands for transcendent and timeless. Folks, the entire point of this is not to focus on yourself. The Metropolis does this weird trick where it will try to say that it's all about you. And in all the billboards that you see, it'll say, you deserve it. Buy yourself a Volvo, or give yourself more energy, buy this energy drink. But really what it's telling you is a can of caffeine. It doesn't really care about true vitality for you or true health or true life. And so if you want to have an ever renewable source of energy that you will not need to replenish with energy drinks or buying yourself things that you don't need, that keep you further enslaved and committed to running this treadmill in the Metropolis, you want to find the kind of words that will always be true. In other words, timeless and transcendent words. For instance, words like faith, words like creativity, words like justice, words like love, words like family. Those are words that will always be true. And those are deep, deep words that are life-giving, life-affirming, and words that can keep you going for your entire life. But you have to identify these words. You have to sit in silence, spill words onto paper, and eventually identify the words that are giving you a sort of an inner call, an inner resonance deep within, so that you know these words are meant for me, okay? Essentially, what I'm trying to point to is a recipe to escape the meaningless machine of the Metropolis that will always have you eventually burning out and running out of steam. Why? Because things don't make sense. And the recipe is simply this. First, you have to take back your senses. You have to recollect. Your senses right now, your head, your heart, and your hands are scattered all over the place. In your email inbox, on various feeds, maybe on a job that you're doing, a job you don't like. Essentially, you're scattered all over the place. Your attention is all over the place, and the world is feeding on your attention. So really, the first step is to recollect your senses, to gather yourself back to yourself. And you do this by extracting yourself from the Metropolis and sitting alone in the desert in silence. That is the preparation before you start spilling words out to the page, before you start tapping the well. Because that's the next phase. After you recollect and get your senses back, you grab your attention back to yourself, right? You go on to the phase of reconnecting. And reconnection is this well. This is where you reconnect with yourself. Now, most people are not recollected or they're reconnected with themselves. Most people are completely scattered within their life in the Metropolis, okay? So reconnection with self and with the source happens at the well once you've had a moment of silence in your everyday, because the silence is really intended to clear your antenna. so that you can receive the signal from your soul, from the source, very clearly, okay? And once you have recollected your attention and your senses and reconnected with yourself and your source, now you're able to meaningfully respond to life, to your life, taking that is in progress right now, okay? So that might mean you return to the Metropolis, but now you will return in a different way, more aware, more awake, more recollected. So when the stimuli hits you, you're not necessarily reacting. You are now responding. There's a difference between those words. Reaction is automatic. Response is something that sounds like it's more conscious, something that you choose, right? And so once you tap into the well and you get your values and your vision, you can see them expressed over here, just beyond the Metropolis, right? As these mountains. Or you can draw two V's upside down. And you can see here a sun or a North Star. And really, the entire point of this, okay, is to come up with the kind of vision and the kind of words that will always be pulling you toward them, that will always be calling you and lifting you toward them. This is the entire key to this drawing and this message, which is that if you want to live a life full of aliveliness, you want to get your energy from these life-giving words that could be represented as this symbol of the sun or these mountains that will always be calling out to you, that will always expand your vision and the horizon, and that will always be giving you energy to get up in the morning and try to climb not somebody else's mountain, but your own mountain, the mountain that you identified down here as your mission, as your word that you're living to live and to die for, okay? So always picture this sun, which you can see its rays are kind of looking like V's. Those could be your values. Those are the things that you want to connect yourself to that will keep pulling you upward, okay? And that will help you to get up in the morning and to live a life that you finally feel is your life and not a life running on a treadmill for somebody else. The last thing I have here is just another helpful way to remember how to live your life to the fullest. And it is, instead of running around the Metropolis with your head, heart, and hands scattered all over the place, what you want to do is bring them together in an integrated way. Okay, and when you bring these H's together in an integrated way, they become capital H's, and they kind of look like a ladder. And this is the ladder that basically allows you to live more deeply. Why? Because when you bring your H's together through recollection, now you're better able to extend this ladder deep down into the well, to listen to your conscience, to listen to your heart, and to extract from it your values, your vision, the words that mean the most to you, right? But at the same time, this ladder can extend upward, right? So that you can start identifying the people, the projects, and the missions that you want to take on in order to make your life more meaningful, in order to take this one and precious life and do something meaningful with it. So this is essentially the diagram. I know it looks convoluted. I know it looks a little bit confusing, but I hope that if you followed me through this and maybe you drew your own version, it will help as a symbolic way to remember the path to a life fully lived. You cannot live a full life, folks, unless it is your life. But in order for you to author your own conscious, productive, fruitful, peaceful, joyful life, you're going to have to take this journey. You're going to have to go through the process of extracting yourself from the Metropolis, going through the desert of silence, tapping into the well to get your vision and values, and then climbing up to the mountain that is uniquely meant for you to climb. And always remember that you'll never reach the sun, you'll never reach the North Star, but it will be something that keeps pulling you upward toward it and giving you an ever renewable source of energy. So folks, that is it. I hope this was helpful. I hope that you got something from this. I want you to leave me a question or a comment below if you find this interesting or fascinating, or if it helped you in some way or something is not clear. And I want to thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.